Ladies and gentlemen, there's a version of you right now that's comfortable. A version that's full of doubt, procrastination, excuses, fears, and stories about why things aren't possible. And if you're going to grow, if you're going to lead, succeed, and live with real meaning, you must do one thing first. You have to kill that version, not silence it, not argue with it. Kill it. Now, let's be clear. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to become who you were always meant to be by shedding the version of you that holds you back. The weak version isn't you. It's the shadow of who you are under pressure, fear, or fatigue. It's the voice that says, you're not good enough. You're too late. What if you fail? It's the part of you that settles, and you cannot grow and protect that version at the same time. Growth is violent to the comfort zone. And when it's time to evolve, your first step isn't addition, it's subtraction. Remove what's no longer serving you. That means letting go of habits you know are killing your time. Ending relationships that only reinforce the narrative of weakness. Disowning the inner critic that never built anything, but always has something to say. But here's the catch. Killing the weak version of yourself isn't a one-time decision. It's daily. It's every time you don't feel like doing the work, but still do it. It's showing up when it's boring, hard, or uncertain. It's being consistent when no one's watching and no one's clapping. That's where the strong version is forged. Most people are waiting for motivation, but discipline doesn't wait. Most people want to feel ready. But leadership begins with action, not comfort. It's not about finding your strength. It's about choosing strength again and again in the face of resistance. We are all born with greatness, but we're also born into a world that trains us to play small, to conform, to obey the rules of mediocrity. That's the trap. The moment you step outside it, the weak version of you will panic. It will scream. It will try to survive. But that version can't come with you. When you kill the weak version of yourself, you free your potential. You make space for courage, clarity, and conviction. And that's where growth begins, not in the presence of ease, but in the absence of safety. So the question is simple, but it's not easy. Which version of you are you feeding today? 5 keynotes from the speech. Your comfort zone is a cage that the weak version of yourself thrives in. Growth begins when you decide to break out. You don't need to find strength. You need to choose strength repeatedly, especially when it's inconvenient. The weak version of you will always offer excuses. The strong version responds with action. You can't become your future self if you're still protecting the habits, people, and beliefs of your past. Killing the weak version of yourself is a daily commitment. It's not a single choice, it's a lifestyle. Your comfort zone is a cage that the weak version of yourself thrives in. Growth begins when you decide to break out. The comfort zone is a powerful place. It's familiar, predictable, and safe. It's the environment where your routines run on autopilot, where risk is minimized, and where failure feels distant. At first glance, it might even seem like a healthy space, but in reality, the comfort zone is a carefully disguised trap, a trap designed to keep the weak version of yourself alive and in control. And until you recognize it for what it is, you will continue to live beneath your potential, even if you convince yourself that you're doing fine. The weak version of you is nourished by ease. It loves routine, repetition, and the illusion of progress without the challenge of transformation. This version resists pressure, avoids friction, and fears uncertainty. It wants you to stay where you are because where you are is familiar, and familiarity offers a false sense of security. It whispers lies like, at least you're not failing, or you've worked hard enough, or you're not ready for more. These statements sound rational, they sound protective, but they are barriers disguised as logic. And every time you listen to them, you build stronger walls around yourself. Growth, by contrast, is violent to your comfort. It demands movement, it demands discomfort, questions, new habits, new standards, and often a new identity. You cannot grow and remain the same. You cannot evolve without letting go of the parts of you that prefer stagnation over sacrifice. When you remain in the comfort zone, you're not just avoiding failure, you're also avoiding excellence. You're not just playing it safe, you're silently agreeing to stay small. What many people fail to realize is that the comfort zone isn't neutral. It's not a waiting room. It's a place where your potential slowly suffocates under the weight of hesitation. It's where your ambition begins to rot because you keep postponing risk. You trade your dreams for a sense of control, and eventually you start lowering your expectations, not because you're incapable, but because the weak version of yourself has convinced you that your current state is, the trap is reinforced every day. Society rewards comfort. It celebrates convenience. It pushes the idea that life should be easy, that struggle is a sign something is wrong, and that you shouldn't have to work too hard for anything. But that's not reality. Every meaningful achievement, every invention, every breakthrough, every act of greatness was born in discomfort. It was the result of someone stepping outside the lines of what felt easy and daring to challenge themselves in ways that scared them. This is why the weak version of yourself must be removed, not corrected, not improved, removed, because it will always find ways to survive as long as the comfort zone is preserved. The real you, the one capable of strength, vision, discipline, and leadership, doesn't live inside that cage. That version needs pressure to grow, challenges to sharpen, and decisions that pull you into the unknown. And none of that can happen while you're still clinging to what feels safe. You will never be ready to leave your comfort zone. There will never be a moment where everything aligns perfectly and fear disappears. That's a lie the weak version tells you to keep you still. Readiness doesn't come before the leap. It comes after. It comes in the moments when you take action, even when you feel unprepared. It comes when you do the hard thing before you feel confident. And in doing so, you build the confidence you were waiting for. So when you recognize that the comfort zone is a cage, your choice becomes clear. You can either stay inside, feeding the weak version of yourself every excuse and every justification, or you can step out, face the tension, and begin the work of becoming who you were meant to be. The door is open. But the path forward won't meet you halfway. You have to move first. That's the beginning of growth. That's the beginning of everything. You don't need to find strength. You need to choose strength repeatedly, especially when it's inconvenient. One of the biggest misconceptions people carry is that strength is something you discover. They imagine it like a hidden talent, a buried treasure, or a moment of sudden clarity that changes everything. They wait for it. They wait for a better time, a better mindset, a better opportunity. But strength doesn't show up when you wait for it. It shows up when you choose it, especially in the moments when it feels hardest to do so. We all have days when we're not motivated, days when fear is louder than confidence, when doubt overshadows our goals, and when quitting feels easier than continuing. In those moments, strength doesn't arrive on its own. It must be summoned. And that's where most people go wrong. They think strength should feel easy. They think they should want to be disciplined, want to push through pain, want to face discomfort. But real strength rarely feels like desire. It feels like duty. It feels like responsibility to yourself, even when every part of you wants to retreat. Choosing strength is a decision, not an emotion. You make it when you get out of bed early to do the work no one sees. You make it when you resist the urge to argue, complain, or give up. You make it when you take responsibility instead of shifting blame. These aren't dramatic movie-like moments. These are small, quiet decisions. But they build your foundation. They reinforce the version of you that can lead, endure, and inspire. What stops people from choosing strength isn't lack of ability. It's the false belief that strength has to feel good. But discomfort is not the enemy. It's the signal. It means you're in the right place. It means you're being tested, and tests don't care how you feel. They care how you act. Choosing strength doesn't mean being fearless. It means you move forward in spite of fear. It means you feel the resistance, and instead of backing away, you lean into it. This decision has to be made every day, and not just on the good days. The test of your character is how you behave when you're tired, overwhelmed, disappointed, or tempted to fall back into old patterns. That's when strength matters most. That's when leadership is real, because anyone can act strong when life is easy. But it's who you are when things fall apart that reveals what you've chosen repeatedly over time. And strength is cumulative. Every time you choose it, even in a small way, you add to the reserve. The more you choose strength in difficult moments, the more natural it becomes. It becomes your identity. It becomes automatic. You start to show up differently. You carry a presence that others recognize, not because you're louder or more dominant, but because you're solid. You've done the hard work. You've shown discipline without applause. You've picked yourself up without needing a cheerleader. That kind of strength is unshakable. It's also contagious. When others see you choose strength consistently, they begin to believe they can do it too. That's how leadership works, not by commanding others, but by setting a standard they feel inspired to meet. You become a mirror of what's possible simply because you've made hard decisions over and over again. The world doesn't need more people waiting to feel strong. It needs more people willing to be strong, regardless of how they feel. If you only act when it's easy, you're at the mercy of your moods, your environment, and your circumstances. But when you learn to act powerfully in the absence of comfort, you take control. You stop reacting and start choosing. The difference between average and exceptional isn't ability, it's choice. Every single day, you are either choosing strength or choosing comfort. You are either reinforcing discipline or indulging distraction. There is no neutral ground. Your future self is shaped by those decisions. And in every moment, you have a chance to step forward, not because you discovered something new in you, but because you decided once again to be strong. The weak version of you will always offer excuses. The strong version responds with action. Excuses are the language of limitation. They're the defense mechanism of the weak version of yourself, crafted carefully, spoken often, and believed deeply. They sound reasonable. They sound smart. But underneath every excuse is the same quiet truth fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of hard work, fear of not being enough. And instead of confronting that fear, the weak version of you hides behind explanations, distractions, and rationalizations. It convinces you that there's a good reason not to try, not to speak up, not to change, not to grow. And when you listen to it long enough, those excuses start to sound like facts. But the strong version of you doesn't speak in excuses, it speaks in action. It understands that excuses are mental noise. They don't move you forward, they don't solve problems, and they don't build anything of value. The strong version doesn't wait to feel ready. It doesn't need to explain away discomfort. It takes the next step, even when the conditions aren't perfect. Especially when the conditions aren't perfect. Because action is where clarity is found. It's where growth happens. It's where transformation begins. Excuses are always available. There will always be a reason to delay, a reason to avoid, a reason to stay small. You can blame your past. You can blame your environment. You can point to a lack of resources or energy or timing. And those reasons might even carry some truth. But here's the difference. The weak version of you uses truth as a shield to avoid effort. The strong version acknowledges truth and still moves forward. Because forward is the only direction progress exists. The strong version of you doesn't pretend that challenges aren't real. It just refuses to be stopped by them. While the weak version waits for the right mood, the right motivation, or the right moment, the strong version creates momentum through discipline. It understands that motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. But discipline is a choice, a habit, a mindset. And the more you act in the face of resistance, the more you train your mind to override the noise that holds most people back. When you act instead of making excuses, you shift your identity. You begin to trust yourself. You prove that you're someone who does what needs to be done, no matter how you feel. That kind of self-trust is powerful. It's the foundation of confidence, not just in yourself, but in how others see you. Leaders aren't those who talk the most. They're the ones who do the most when it matters. And what makes them reliable isn't their words. It's their consistency in choosing action over excuse. The weak version of you wants to be protected. It wants guarantees. It wants comfort. And so it builds stories to protect your ego from the risk of failure. It tells you you're not qualified, that you'll be judged, that you should wait until you're more experienced. But growth doesn't care about those stories. Success doesn't arrive when you're ready. It arrives when you're committed. And commitment means doing the work, regardless of the noise in your head. Every excuse is a small surrender. Every time you choose it, you shrink your world. You accept less. You reinforce the belief that you're not in control. And over time, those small surrenders become your reality. You don't need a single catastrophic failure to lose. You only need 1,000 small excuses. That's how mediocrity is built, one skipped effort at a time. But every time you act in spite of the excuse, you chip away at the weak version of yourself. You remove its power. You prove that you are not your limitations. You are your choices. And those choices don't need to be massive or dramatic. They need to be consistent. Choosing to show up, choosing to keep going, choosing to finish, choosing to lead. That's how the strong version of you is built, one decision, one action at a time. The strong version of you doesn't speak louder. It moves differently. It chooses responsibility over justification. It chooses courage over comfort. And it shows up again and again, not because it always feels strong, but because it knows that strength is built in the doing, not in the waiting. The weak version will always have something to say, but the strong version always has something to do. And that's what changes everything. You can't become your future self if you're still protecting the habits, people, and beliefs of your past. Becoming the person you want to be, stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more fulfilled, is not just about addition. It's not only about setting goals, making plans, or building new routines. It's equally, and sometimes more importantly, about subtraction, about letting go. Letting go of the things that were part of an older version of yourself. The version that was shaped by fear, survival, approval, seeking, or comfort. The version that once helped you cope or blend in, but now keeps you from moving forward. You can't carry that version with you into the next chapter and expect real transformation to happen. You have to be willing to release the parts of you that no longer serve the vision you hold for your life. Old habits are not just behaviors, they are identities. When you repeatedly avoid discomfort, overthink decisions, procrastinate on what matters, or give in to distractions, you're reinforcing who you used to be. Those habits might have been developed as coping mechanisms during difficult times. They might have helped you navigate uncertainty or stay safe when you didn't believe in your ability to rise. But if you continue to protect those patterns, you're holding yourself hostage. You're preserving the conditions that keep you small, and that's the silent enemy of growth. People play a role in this too. Some people are tightly connected to the older version of you. They know you as the person who used to say yes too often, who played it safe, who joked about your dreams, but never chased them. And as you begin to change, they may resist. They may remind you of who you were, not who you're becoming, not because they're cruel, but because they're comfortable with your old identity. And letting go of certain relationships isn't always about cutting people off with bitterness. It's about realizing that if you're going to rise, you can't be surrounded by voices that anchor you in your past. You need people who reflect your future, not your former limitations. Beliefs are perhaps the most stubborn part of the past to release. They hide in your mind as facts. I'm not good at this. People like me don't succeed at that level. It's too late. This is just how I am. Those are not facts, they're stories. Stories that may have protected you at one point, but are now doing the opposite. They're no longer keeping you safe, they're keeping you small. And if you don't question those beliefs, you will continue to live under rules you never consciously chose. You'll make decisions based on limitations that aren't even real anymore. The difficult truth is this: your future self requires a new standard, a new mindset, a new circle, and new discipline. You can't become that person while defending everything that shaped the old you. You can't hold on to comfort and grow into courage. You can't cling to approval and step fully into authenticity. At some point, you have to decide whether you're more loyal to your past or your potential, because you can't serve both. Letting go is painful, not because the past was perfect, but because it was familiar. It gave you structure, identity, routine. But familiarity and freedom don't always coexist. Real freedom, real growth, often feels uncomfortable at first. It means walking away from the behaviors, environments, and thought patterns that no longer align with where you're going. It's an act of shedding, of stepping into the unknown, and of trusting that your future self is worth more than your past comfort. You have to make a choice, one that isn't loud or dramatic, but deeply personal and powerful. A choice to stop protecting the person who is afraid and start building the person who is ready. A choice to interrupt patterns that have kept you stuck, even if they feel easier. A choice to detach from people who reinforce the old version of you and move closer to those who challenge you to be better. A choice to rewrite the beliefs you've lived under and replace them with truths that empower, not limit you. Every step toward the future version of yourself requires a step away from the past. You don't become someone new by doing what you've always done. You become someone new by seeing clearly what must be left behind and having the courage to leave it. The person you want to become is waiting, but they can't come to life while you're still protecting everything that kept you who you used to be. Growth demands sacrifice. And the first thing you must sacrifice is the comfort of your old self. Killing the weak version of yourself is a daily commitment. It's not a single choice, it's a lifestyle. It's easy to think of change as a single dramatic moment. One big decision that flips a switch, transforming who you are and how you live. But real growth doesn't work that way. Real change isn't one defining event. It's a series of consistent decisions made every single day. It's not a motivational speech, a life-altering book, or a single moment of inspiration that makes you stronger. It's the small, often invisible choices you make when no one's watching. Killing the weak version of yourself isn't about a one-time breakthrough. It's about committing to a lifestyle of discipline, clarity, and action over and over again. That weak version of you doesn't go away overnight. It doesn't vanish just because you had a strong day or an honest conversation with yourself. It waits, it adapts, it shows up differently depending on your mood, your energy, your circumstances. One day it might speak through procrastination, another day through doubt, another through distraction. It's persistent because it's familiar and it thrives in repetition, which means your strength must be even more consistent. You have to choose to confront and silence that weak version every single time it appears. Some days it's going to be easy. You'll feel focused, driven, and clear. You'll have the momentum to get through your responsibilities and push beyond them. But other days it will feel like everything is working against you. Your energy will be low, the voices of self, doubt will grow louder, and old habits will try to creep back in. Those are the most important days. That's when the commitment to this lifestyle is tested. And that's when the strongest version of you is built. Not when you feel powerful, but when you choose power despite feeling weak. Most people don't fail because they don't know what to do. They fail because they don't do it consistently. They make a bold decision one day and expect it to carry them through the rest of the year. But strength is like a muscle. It doesn't grow because you lifted heavy once. It grows because you lifted daily, even when it hurt, even when it was inconvenient, even when you didn't see immediate results. The process of killing the weak version of yourself is the same. It requires daily effort, daily resistance, and daily ownership. When you treat this as a lifestyle, not a one-time fix, your relationship with difficulty changes. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop hoping things will get easier. Instead, you begin to embrace the process. You find pride in discipline. You take control of your choices. You understand that every decision is a vote for the person you're becoming or the person you're leaving behind, and those votes add up slowly, quietly, powerfully. Living this way means paying attention to the small moments. Waking up early instead of hitting snooze, finishing the workout instead of quitting halfway, saying no to distractions when it would be easier to give in. Speaking up when your fear tells you to stay quiet. These moments might not seem monumental on their own, but together they shape the architecture of who you are. They separate the version of you that talks about change from the version that lives it. People often look for motivation to maintain this lifestyle, but motivation fades. It can't be the few. What lasts is purpose. What lasts is discipline. What lasts is a clear understanding that your old self cannot come with you where you're going. That voice of weakness will always try to negotiate with you. It will always try to sell you comfort, convenience, and excuses. But you have to answer it with action, not once, not sometimes, every day. Every day, there will be setbacks. You'll make mistakes. You'll fall into old patterns. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. The key is to catch yourself quickly, to reset, to recommit, to keep showing up, because the weak version of you is hoping you'll quit after the first failure. But the strong version learns from it, grows through it, and comes back stronger. This way of living doesn't promise ease. It promises clarity. It promises a life that you've built with intention, not one you've settled into by default. When killing the weak version of yourself becomes a lifestyle, you stop waiting to become your best self. You start creating it one decision, one habit, one day at a time. The journey to becoming who you are truly meant to be begins with one brutal, honest truth: the weaker version of you has to die. Not in hatred, not in shame, but in clarity, because that version, rooted in comfort, excuses, fear, and limitation, cannot carry the weight of your purpose. It cannot walk the path of discipline, leadership, and growth You don't kill that version once and move on. You kill it every day by choosing courage over comfort, action over excuse, strength over story, and future over past. You kill it by refusing to protect what's no longer serving you. And you replace it with a new identity, one that is built on responsibility, consistency, and vision. This isn't about perfection, it's about commitment. It's about waking up each day with the mindset that you will no longer let the old you run your life. Growth demands sacrifice, and the first thing you must give up is who you used to be. That's the price. And the reward is becoming someone you respect, someone who leads from within, lives with conviction, and never forgets that real strength is not something you wait to find. It's something you choose to become every single day.